Live. And so, hello and welcome to another episode of Loose Canon. This week we are going to kind of go back to where were paused at with the Clovis Bray journal. Only this is the half of the journal. It was what was it? It was like the everyone got like a little piece of code or something, and then the community put it together. Is that how it was
Yeah,
found?
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Bungie does cool things like that. How do you feel about them doing a challenge like that where it's like uh you need a good number of people to be like, here's my answer, and then some select few people actually are the ones who put it together.
um, yeah, I guess I'm for it. It's
Hmm.
fine, as long as it doesn't take anything away from the game. I mean, the cool thing about it is that you have a collective participation
Hmm.
amongst all the players and fans. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I get it kind of can promote a little bit of elitism
Yeah.
because there are going to be people that do this and that's all they live for. And
Hmm.
so they're going to be the ones that everybody caters to. But at the same time, you kind of got to go with that.
I mean, that is the good thing about the community. I will say the community. No one's being like an elitist, being like, yeah, this is only happening because of me. If it wasn't for me,
Right.
no one would have this entry. They're not like that at all. There are very dedicated, helpful people who are like, I can compile this information, and it will be a service to the community. And when they do, they're like, this was done because of everyone that was involved. But me personally, I wish it was something that could be more involved because and there are things that are more involved where it's like there's a secret emblem like in Shadowkeep. Did you get the Shadowkeep collector's edition?
Yeah, I did.
And so like the cryptolith, I have it on my shelf right over there. It had the puzzle where you had to line it up perfectly with a series of runes, and you didn't know what the runes were if you didn't actually look into your collector's edition. And it was like you line them up, and the tricky thing was you had to line them up perfectly air quotes, because they actually had to be misaligned a little bit just to like get it to actually slide out properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And inside was an emblem code, and that was awesome. It's like, oh my god, I figured this out. But for the bigger things, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how we feel about it, because part of me is like, yeah, I mean, it's really cool that it's this big event, but it's also just like, I don't understand what's happening. I'm just gonna wait for it to be figured out.
Right. And that's one of those things that kind of makes me, say that it could sometimes promote elitism is
Hmm.
because not necessarily the big guys, that I'm worried about, but
Yeah,
there are a lot of people out there that they don't believe in sharing knowledge,
yeah,
and I mean, you can't do anything about that. People are like that in all walks of life. You're going to
yeah.
encounter that everywhere you go.
And
Um,
actually, just really quick, sorry to cut you off. That is actually a theme in what we're talking about today. So that's oddly fitting that we're talking about this now.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I'm all for sharing as much knowledge as possible. I don't think that anybody gets more powerful by hanging on to knowledge. I mean, you obviously are, promoting your own strength in yourself
Mhm.
as a person by sharing your knowledge and gaining more knowledge. I mean, I think that's the ultimate goal in life is to, it's ayat, right? It's just
Mhm.
you want to the end result justifies the means from last episode.
Mhm.
So the idea that if you've learned something, you've got to keep it a secret is kind of I've seen it a lot, and what I'd rather see is like what you were saying is when they do ARGs or when they do uh, player engagements like this, I would like to see them um, promote more interaction amongst
Mhm.
the people. So like in more involvement. So maybe
Mhm.
not necessarily every you have to exclusively give your piece in order for the ARG to progress or for that puzzle to progress. But maybe there's a little bit something more special, like that emblem that you
Mhm.
get. that's unique to you,
Yeah.
that shows your unique involvement with it. You know?
It's a really tricky thing to do perfectly, because no matter what you do, either it's going to be just so immediately easy because every individual person can do it, and you have one really smart person who does it within a minute,
Uh
and
huh.
everyone's just like, okay, I'm just gonna do exactly what they did. Or
Yeah.
it's so extensive that 99% of the people are just like, here's four numbers that I have, and the
Yeah.
1% is like, okay, we're compiling this. Thank you for the information, and that's cool. But they've been doing it a lot.
Yeah, and and the perfect example of that is when we got Curse of Osiris, and there was
Mhm.
the Valkyrie staff that was hidden out in a forest in New York or whatever
Oh
it was.
yeah, yeah.
And
The
so
javelin.
one guy gets it, and then everybody gets a token. But then about 20 tokens later, they find out the whole thing was shut down because they weren't even supposed to put that out in the forest or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So
I'm not surprised that they didn't like get Bungie approval to do that. I'm not surprised about that, but I'm surprised that it was like shut down. To hear
who
that is surprising.
Vicarious Visions, I mean, was the one that if I'm not mistaken was the one that kind of made that happen.
Yeah, and
And
that was
then
Warmind, not Curse of Osiris.
yeah, I'm sorry,
For anyone who
Warmind.
was like, "Oh my god, I never heard about this."
Yeah, Warmind. That was Warmind? Yeah, it was.
Because it was the
Okay.
javelin.
Yeah, it was a javelin.
Or you said it was Valkyrie. Is that what it's actually called? Is it called a Valkyrie javelin or something?
Yeah, it's the Valkyrie
By the
javelin.
way.
Well, I just remember because when you pick it up, you have to stand on the plate, and then it's the Valkyrie, oh whatever X
Or maybe that's like
staff,
the code
javelin or
name
whatever.
for it, but it's called the
Yeah,
javelin.
yeah.
I'm actually, it's funny that you bring it up. I'm actually kind of upset with myself about that, because when that was figured out, when it got down to the coordinates, I saw it very early on. I saw like when it was posted, like these are coordinates, and I put in the coordinates, and I'm like, I'm 4 hours from there, and
So you could have done it.
I
Yeah.
just started a new job,
Oh,
and I was like,
damn.
I just started a new job. I'm still on a 90-day probationary period. Really shouldn't call out. Should I call out though? And I was like debating it. I was like, why would they do real world coordinates to a place that's not even in the game? Like, what would that
Mhm.
mean? And there was like this voice inside of me that I need to listen to more, who was like, go, do it.
Yeah, just go.
It would have been so cool. I'd have it right over here, just be
Yeah.
like right on my wall, you know?
Well, then one person did it,
Yeah.
and they went
There's a
out
group
there.
of
It was like,
people. I didn't think it was real,
"What?"
because what is up with it when people find leaks or find like exclusive things that they're the people who haven't upgraded a cell phone since 2004? Like, why is it always them? We have
uh,
phones that can zoom like 100 meters
I
with perfect
know,
clarity
I
now,
know.
and it's always the people that are still like, I like my razor. Like,
Yeah.
you're not taking this away from me.
That's hilarious. Yeah, maybe they have like devoted all of their energy into the most high tech, home
Hmm.
system or whatever
Yeah.
PC, and then like their phone is just a
Their
brick
phone, they just don't give a
BlackBerry.
crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where they
No,
just
yeah,
don't
yeah. They'll
care.
take a picture with like a potato, but they had to solve some elaborate,
Yeah, they're like, I didn't actually
theoretical
have a
physicist.
camera with me, but I did draw a picture. If that's good enough, will you believe me? Because I saw the
Yeah.
pictures, and it was like they were so close up, and it was so grainy. I was like, that's nothing. Like, that's not
Right.
even a
And so
thing.
that's the other thing to that is people don't believe it. Is
Yeah.
immediately when you see it, no one wants to believe it because they're like, oh, that's some grainy photo somebody photoshopped and made it up. There's no way. I remember I think you and I were first questioning it when we first saw it, and I was
Yeah,
like, there's no way
probably.
that's real.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I remember just one last derailment before we actually get on with the show. I remember back, speaking of Osiris, back in House of Wolves, when the first week of trials happened and people in the BNet forums were going, I just went flawless in trials, I'm going to Mercury. And I saw like the first post about it. I'm like, yeah, fuck off, dude. That's not a fucking thing. And I was like annoyed that someone had the gall to lie like that. Like
Yeah,
that they could just like say, I just went flawless in trials. I'm going to a planet that no one's ever gotten to go to before. And I'm like, no, you fucking don't. Like, that's not a
yeah.
thing. Get out of here. And then I saw another one and I'm like, this is a dumb joke. Why is everyone? And then I saw like a video and I'm like, oh crap. Like that's like I was just
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
wrong.
Bungie in this game, and
Yeah.
they love to mess with you. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Trust
all
me.
for it. And over the years, it's kind of progressed to this state that we kind of expect it every time something new comes out.
Yeah, and
And
that's a fault of the community, in my opinion. We
yeah,
we shouldn't be expecting secrets, and I mean secrets, sure, but we shouldn't be expecting like secrets like that. We shouldn't be expecting the new place to go. It's
right.
like going into this season. What did I expect? I expected the secrets of learning about the Cabal, learning about interesting aspects of that. Secrets and activities, and like I don't know, like I what I didn't expect was the Glycon. What I didn't expect was such an impressive mission, and I'm so happy to have that, and not be disappointed by not having that, if that were to be the case.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, I guess we kind of knew that it existed, but we didn't know it existed at that kind of level.
I mean, I didn't know it existed until it was there. I mean, like we
I
saw
was
the
one
we
of I
saw
was
the
one of the
trailer,
boosters
the
for the
image. We didn't know what it
yeah,
meant though.
yeah. I thought it was going to be a just a cabal ship, and I thought it was going to be, I guess it kind
Hmm.
of was, but I mean, I thought it was just going to be devoted to Callus,
Yeah,
all devoted to Callus. But
I really like how
I'm
they
glad
went with
it
that.
turned out to be what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole what do you call it, the moss infection, the green
The
infection.
lichen. That's
Yeah,
that's
the
what I call,
lichen.
because there's so many different terms that they've used for it. They're like it's lichen, it's fungus, it's flora, it's
Yeah,
it's sarcophagus growths, and I'm like lichen. That's
yeah.
it. I'm using that
Good.
one, and I'm not switching up the terminology. I'm putting my
There
foot
you
down
go.
on that just to keep it consistent.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see what goes on with that because it's right there under our nose and it's
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
everything that's in the game and I mean there's they could definitely go uh they could go a particular road that would make that whole thing unravel
Hmm.
if they wanted to. So I'm hoping that
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely. So,
But yeah, ARGs, I love it. More community involvement is even better. And I would like for people to have something specifically unique to them in the game. I think that that's the only thing that is lacking. I think everybody has access to, um, these great unique rewards, doing different things, but something that is specific to one particular player would be cool. And whether that be just a number or a digit or whatever that's added to your emblem. It'd be
yeah.
kinda cool.
I mean, they do that. They do have like trackers, like in Season of Dawn. All the Fractaline that you donated, you have a tracker for that. And they're like, I have people in my clan that donated like a million or a billion, like some obscurely high number, and they're like, "This is all I'm ever gonna wear because I want people to see this giant number on my emblem and be like, what the hell did you do?"
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay, do you want to talk about the lore card this week?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's do
Awesome, I'll
that.
put that on the screen.
Pull it up here. Yeah, so I switched it up a little bit, so now if you're looking for lore cards online out there on Twitter,
Hmm.
you'll find them at Destiny Armory. So it's Armory, @Armory Defined,
Hmm.
and that's on Twitter, and so they'll be there every Thursday from now on, as well as, weekly posts about weapons, but so that's going to be the new home, and that will help consolidate it. So if you're looking at past lore cards, you'll be able to find them much easier instead of having to sift through all my nonsense and
Yeah.
garbling.
Keeping it professional.
Yeah, exactly. So this week's lore card was on a shotgun that came out with Destiny 2.
Oh yeah, it
Like,
did, huh?
it came out when Destiny 2 came out. And why? Because it just recently got a lore entry.
Yep.
That just happened. So that's really cool that they did that. So a lot of items they went back and they added, well, I say a lot, a few items they went back and
Yeah.
they added lore entries to that were old in the game. And so this was one of them. And ironically, or if that's the thing, it's called retrofuturism. So this one is retrofuture. Retrofuturism is the future as seen from the past and the past as seen from the future. It's a movement that visualizes and the influence and depictions of the future that was produced in a past era. A science bent on anticipating what will come. So, what does that mean? So, basically, retrofuturism is defined as a movement in the creative arts showing the influence and depictions of a future produced uh, in an earlier era. So, like, kind of looking back on the 50s and seeing how they thought the future would have ended up. Like, if you were from the 50s and you thought, well, in the future, we'll all have flying cars, you did a bunch of art, you made a bunch of pictures, and then in the future you look back on it and go, wow, that was silly. Or you think, oh wow, that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So um it it's the word is a blend of an old fashioned retro styles, the word retro, and futuristic technology. So what I found, which was pretty cool, was retrofuturism is a look or a theme which combines past and future aesthetics. Retrofuturism appears in books, movies, comics, and art that imagine the future based on the time period they were produced. And what I didn't know is that retrofuturism has now become like the umbrella term for all of the different subgenres. And this didn't really happen until I would say over the last decade that it really kind of became what it is now. And so, like, you think back to all the different arts of, depictions, like, what's a really good one?
I
Like, for
mean,
instance,
like what
flying
you said, the
cars,
flying
that I
cars.
said
That's
before.
immediately
Yeah.
what I think of when I think of people who thought what the future would be. That's
Yeah.
probably the best.
Yeah. So if you think about old advertisements and old magazines, you think about the art that was on the cover of those, or you think about old cars that had really elaborate wings down the side. This past era really paid attention to what they thought the future would be. So it was really kind of selling the idea of the future. Like right now, we do it too, but maybe not as fantastically as they did back in the day, which kind of, I wish they would do more of that now. But anyway, nostalgia, right?
Hmm.
um, so the subgenres of retrofuturism is, and this is cool, steampunk. That kind of is the Victorian era.
I love
Diesel punk.
steampunk.
Yeah, isn't it cool? A lot of people really get into it too, and there's like
Mhm.
whole groups of people that just devote their lives to living steampunk.
There's just something
Uh,
about like machinery that you look at and be like, that shouldn't work. But it still does. Like that, I just
yeah,
love that when it's like, look at
yeah,
those
like a bunch
gears, and
of
it's
gears
like
and
what?
cogs, yeah, and
Like
brass and
like a Wild
copper.
Wild West, the giant
Yeah.
spider. It's like that shouldn't work, but I love it.
Another one is diesel punk. So this is the aesthetic of like World War One and World War Two, and so it kind of has that gritty tank, armored car, that kind of stuff from that era. And then uh, some of the ones that popped out at me that I've seen, and actually one artist that I really love does this, but deco punk, Atom punk, and they love to put punk against these things. So it's like,
Mm.
I don't know why, but I'm all for
Because
it,
it
I
goes
guess.
against the norm. You're a punk.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
punk. It's the do-it-yourself, anti-establishment, blah blah blah. So, deco punk and atom punk, those are kind of like your deco punk is really cool because it has this like upscale the dapper era with like tuxedos and beautiful elaborate marble statues that are 20 feet tall, that
So
kind of
okay, so
aesthetic.
it is like Art Deco.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And so it's kind of bringing that, but now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
Adam Punk is the the 50s, the atomic era. You see a lot of that, I guess, like Fallout, stuff like that. Ray gun Gothic, that was crazy. It's like this blend of Art Deco and Streamline. So when you think of Streamline, you think of like the train that's stretched out really far with the like fast movement stylization where it's very long and silvery aluminum shiny metal with, I don't know, a statue. It looks like it's flying on the front of the vehicle, things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
but that blends that with Art Deco. And so like a lot of makeup stuff like that goes with it too. And then of course cyberpunk. And so all of these are considered subgenres of retrofuturism. And the reason why it's more popular today is because we have this really extensive back catalog of what we thought the future was going to be like and really playing to that. So really maybe the latter part of the 1800s is when people started thinking about the future, right? You have the industrial revolution, you have everybody wanting to know what's the future going to be like? Are we going to have flying cars? Are we going to all be living in the sky and stuff like that? And so now we have over 100 years of all this art and beautiful aesthetic to look back on and recycle.
Mm.
So anyway, retrofuturism originates for two overlapping trends, one directly inspired by imagining the future and the other blends past retro appeal. It attempted to predict the future either in a serious projection or in what we had as far as existing technology. They pull from science and invention or sci fi novels and story. However, retro brings the inverse, starting with the retro appeal of the old styles aesthetics. So these two blend the past and the present and the future elements to create retrofusion. But the trends themselves don't technically refer to a specific time, and they can be seen as causing a feedback loop of nostalgia that recalls a lost future that never happened. So it's funny that they would use this particular weapon to put a lore entry on,
Mm.
because the flavor text on this item, which I thought was funny, it says they were so optimistic about us.
Mm.
So it's funny to think that in Destiny 2, when we first got the game, if you think about that flavor text now versus when you first got the weapon and you reflect on it and you think about yourself
Yeah,
and
no,
the whole game as a whole.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
How this comes back to be like uh back in the early Destiny days, it was like we are the light, we're gonna stop the darkness, so darkness is evil. They were so optimistic about us. Now we're using stasis.
Uh huh. Yeah. So
I was on the
whoever
bench.
wrote that one did it on purpose.
That's a good one. And one thing I'd like to say that retrofuturism is kind of a thing that Destiny is actually really adopted, and they said so without not in so many words though. In I believe it was the Cosmodrome ride along way back in Destiny 1, where
Oh,
they were
really?
like, yeah, they were going over. So you know in the Divide, so when you're on the right side of the map on the Divide, you have that tank and it's all like rusted out, and
Yeah.
it doesn't look like a futuristic tank. It looks just like a regular tank. And they kind
Yeah.
of said how the golden age was such rapid growth that even though we had all these new future things, the past was still just kind of there, and it was like so heavily influencing how things would look. So it was
Yeah.
like they got to say what the future will be from the past, but because they were so heavily influenced by the past, they were almost restricted by it. So instead of flying cars or flying tanks, they're like, yeah, we'll have tanks and they look just like our old tanks, a little bit different. Like, because
Yeah.
they actually had the ability to do it, but they were just kind of restricting themselves.
Yeah, that's really cool because you think about how fast things progressed for people, humanity. When the traveler came, the advancement was so rapid, so fast
Hmm.
that it you had to hurry up
Yeah.
and use what this new stuff you have, but use it with the old stuff you already have. Kind of like this
Because
rush to advancement.
if you spend all your time designing a new future aesthetic, you're falling behind. You know,
Right.
everyone's already passed. They have things in production, and you're working on what it's going to look like. Like that's not going to
Right.
make you money, and
You
that's
know,
all
that's
anyone's there
funny.
for.
That's funny because early on they decided to peg these weapon foundries with specific aesthetics that
Hmm.
tied into their whole philosophies, which I really thought was cool. Like for instance, the one that brings to my attention right off the bat is Suros,
Hmm.
who is all about elegance and wanting their weapons to
Hmm.
just have a beauty attached to them. And then you think about the opposite of that, which is Hake, which is just kind of using the old school
Yep.
designs, rails, attachments like we have now almost.
And then
And
Amalon is like, how can we completely redefine what the weapons are?
yeah, oh man, and yeah, they're messing with stuff they're not really supposed to, or is
Yeah.
dangerous, I guess. So there's that, and
They
then
gave us trace rifles. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
liquid ammo and all kinds of stuff.
Mm. And so we actually wanted to talk about Retrofuturist specifically because of this lore entry. Have you finished your lore card before I go on to this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this lore entry just came out like 2 weeks ago. I guess it was supposed to come out at the start of the season, but they had an issue with it. So it's on the screen. I'll just read it really quick. I I'm sorry. I watch them frolic blithely beneath the oblivious god. I am among those assembled to witness their training. They wish to become stronger than the Cabal, than Zevo Arath, than the Hive. Their ignorance of their true enemy is overwhelming. They cannot even put a name to it. I am choked with rancid ambrosia. Two men now remain in the artificial battleground. Their movements are simplistic. One charges blindly ahead, the other rolls to the side, fires a shotgun, and his opponent falls. The victor turns to the crowd and removes his helmet. Oily fluids bead on the flesh of his face. He bears teeth that squirm with microbial life. He throws his arms upward in jubilation, and the masses cheer. I do not join them. This form affords me some dignities. Behind the creature reveling in the minor triumph, sacrilege, a perfect being materializes. It gathers meat and offal from, is it offal or offal?
I think it's awful.
Uh, Offal from the ground and reassembles it. An unfathomable gift is given. The crowd has seen this miracle countless times. It has lost all meaning to them. They see it as a resource. I look up to the blank white face. I feel its light on my cheeks. It no longer burns me. Each revival is a choice. I know what to do. And so the narrator of this entry is kind of unlike one that we've ever seen, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. So who or what do you think is speaking here?
Man, I don't know. This one is perplexing for me. I'm wondering if they're if we're
Yeah.
going to get something extra.
So when I first read this, I see the line, I do not join them. This form affords me some dignities. And I think, okay, so the only real shapeshifters we know are the Ahamkara. So at first I thought maybe this is an Ahamkara. But there are other things it talks about where it says they wish to become stronger than the Cabal, than Zivu Arath, than the Hive. So to specify the than the Hive kind of sounds like it's a Hive entity, but that means it's a Hive entity that is in the city somehow. And
Right.
the hive entity kind of makes sense because behind the creature reveling in minor triumph, sacrilege, a perfect being materializes. That's something that the hive believe. Necromancy is wrong. You're not supposed to bring back the dead. If you die, you die. The end. And so that sounds very hive. And then I look up into the blank white face. I feel its light on my cheeks. It no longer burns me, implying that it at one point did burn.
And
And
then the new form kind of helped him
yeah.
from burning.
And so
Yeah.
I wonder what the form is that allows them the dignities not to cheer when a guardian kills another guardian in the Crucible. And in the Ishtar Discord, I've seen people suggest maybe it was a red jack, which feels fitting.
Well, it is a crucible weapon.
Yeah, as well. I mean, this whole thing is taking place in the Crucible. That's why people are watching it and cheering it when one guardian kills another.
Yeah.
So a red jack being on standby observing this makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
It just, I'm
But
not
in like a new form, it's almost like the red jack was taken over by some other entity
well,
like a
it
hive.
would be some other entity pretending to be a red jack,
Yeah.
and
So
they
like they
say, where the hell is it? The line about not even knowing who their true enemy is.
huh. So like they huh.
Their ignorance of their true enemy is overwhelming. They cannot even put a name to it. So is that to say the darkness? Because we don't actually put a name to the darkness. That's just kind of a term that we use.
True. So like the darkness is taking over a frame.
Well, I mean, that's in my opinion, that says that it can't be the darkness because it wouldn't be talking about itself that way. They couldn't put a name to it as opposed to they can't put a name to me. That would imply it is the darkness masquerading or taking over a frame,
Yeah.
which is something that the
Well,
darkness appears
remember,
to be
you know
able to
what?
do.
You know what's funny about that is remember when Callus hijacked what those frames?
Yeah, he had two frames.
Yeah. Hmm.
But why would a frame ever be hurt by the light? By being close to the traveler. Being close to the traveler and hurting is a hive thing, but part of me, I just can't shake the feeling that it's something to do with like Ahamkara specifically because it. But the more I read it, the more I am seeing the side of the argument that it's a hive. Because Savathun has done that. She's infiltrated communities with like stand-in copies of people, you know.
Yeah.
So this could absolutely be like a Savathun's hive in the form of a red jack, just walking around observing guardians and seeing the sacrilege. Because I'd
That's
imagine if it
freaky.
was a Zivu hive, even if Zivu could do that, they would be like excited at the Crucible. This one seems indifferent.
Right. Like it's just beyond or it's beyond there.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I like the idea of being an Ahamkara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do I. But the more I look at it, the more I think it must be hive.
That's creepy though, to
Yeah.
think that a hive could be inside of a red jack or take over a red jack temporarily or
Well, I
whatever.
don't think it's taking over. I think it's just appearing as.
Just like putting on a cloak that
Yeah.
makes him look like a red jack or
Yeah.
something.
So like when you look at it, you don't see an acolyte, you see a red jack, but it is an acolyte.
Some kind of trickery of the mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we have a lot to cover on this episode, and I really wanted to do it in one, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it in one. So let's try to just get through as much of this as we can, and then just do it in two, and we can start moving on into like the meaty lore books. So this is, as we were talking about earlier, this is the ARG discovered lore that Bungie has officially put out as well. So it is corrected of any misspellings and stuff like that. Ishtar has it on the website. It is Clovis Brays Missing Logbook. And this is the second half of the collector's edition logbook where the end of it had like 3 pages, but it's clearly more than 3 pages ripped away. And so this
Right.
is the continuation of Clovis. He to kind of recap, he had just successfully begun the creation of exos. He's using the Alkahest, which is Vex mind fluid passed through clarity, which should, in my opinion, be considered to be stasis. He's passing it through stasis crystals, kind of like a luge, like an ice luge. And through that, he's rewriting what the Vex mind fluid is as what he calls Alkahest, allowing exos to exist. But they still do have issues, and he's kind of working out the issues on these, but it's the biggest advancement in exos he's had. But obviously, other things begin to go wrong.
Yeah, boy, do they ever.
Yeah. So just to kind of like go through this, in the first entry, it's a note on the Forge Star, which is where the Vex come from. He says, due to the absence of heavy elements worth stealing and the abundance of some compounds for growth, they never developed predation. Why bother? Plenty to go around. And so we've had this idea that the Vex aren't acting out of malice for a while. That what they do, they're not doing it because they hate us or because they want us dead. They're just doing it because it's what they do. They don't feel this like
Right. They
war
don't
strife.
have they don't have those
Hmm.
internal structures in place to allow them to feel really anything.
Yeah.
So they're kind of just a mind. Not I don't want to say mindless because they have a mind, but they're just like automaton that
Hmm.
just it just proceeds forward.
And so, speaking of the Vex mind, for a long time we've been under the impression that all Vex are controlled by a singular entity, which would imply that if we were to destroy that singular entity, then all the Vex would cease to exist. But Clovis denies that with his own observances. He says it is not strictly correct to call the Vex a group mind. Rather, they are one master pattern spread across many elements, fractally self similar. So it's 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 kind of like that. They never had a reason to war with each other. Humans look at resources and they're like, we need to have these resources and you can't have these resources. The Vex said we need to create our resources together because of the harsh world that they lived on, or they're all gonna die. And because of that, they basically accepted a master pattern, and all the Vex have accepted it, and they're all moving towards that master pattern,
Master pattern.
which is kind of like a more efficient hive mentality, actually, because the
Well,
hive.
it's a lot like the winnower and the gardener.
How do you mean?
Well, I just think about how they play the game, and there's a pattern set in play, and it's like the flower game. It's like
Hmm.
it just makes me think that all of our enemies are kind of and us are kind of you know
Yeah,
have
we're
have
still
to be
playing the game.
participants. Yeah, yeah. We're just all participants in the game,
Yeah,
whether we want to or not. We had to just accept this inevitability,
and
and that's their version.
yeah. And so this, just to reiterate, this is all like Clovis's notes on observing the Forge Star, observing the Vex in their home planet, and everything, seeing, trying to deduce how they evolved. And so he goes on to say their cellular nature provides an easy analogy for the quanta of matter, energy, space, and time, which is really interesting because at this point in time, Clovis shouldn't understand that the Vex are time traveling robots,
Huh.
and so he's saying that they should easily understand how to manipulate time, but without actually saying they can time travel. So it's kind of impressive. As much as I'm not a fan of Clovis anymore, it's kind of impressive that he was so on the note, so accurate about it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. There's some funny parallels with Clovis too,
Hmm.
that like later on. But yeah, so much of what he was doing was so in tune with what like it's like that saying, he was so ahead of his time.
Mm. He was equally ahead and behind his time. He
Yeah.
Like
He was blinded by his own ambition. He couldn't
yeah.
see that he was ahead of his own time.
Yeah, he really was. I think that's the best way to say it. He was blinded by his own ambition because he made these like terrible choices that he was like, it's all gonna be worth it in the end. And it's like, no, it's not. That's horrible. Oh
It's
my
really
god.
not. If you had only devoted your energy and time to something else, we could have, I don't know,
And
we could have maybe helped do something better. We got exos.
yeah, well, we got the EXO.
My favorite part of the game, or one of the favorite part of the games.
So one of the last things he says here about the Vex is that he says, what I am saying is the Vex are immortal. The Vex have no children. They are the ancestors and the descendants of themselves, first mother, first children, all at once. And so in Destiny 2 we don't really have, well, actually now we have the difference seen in the Vex, but in Destiny 1 it was much more noticeable because like on each planet they would have different vex, each area they'd have different vex. So we had the
Yeah,
precursors, the descendants, the soul collective, the soul divisive, the soul progeny, the Hezen corrective, the Hezen protective, the affix invasive, and the Virgo prohibition. And so each group all went for the master plan, master pattern, but each group did it differently. So for example, the Hezen protective, they were found on Venus, and uh, they were like guarding things, whereas there's Hezen Corrective, which is trying to convert Venus, and so they each had their own role toward the master and pattern of converting everything. And it was the Soul Divisive, and this is one of the most interesting parts about it, because in Season of the Undying last year we saw how we learned that the rest of the Vex are kind of like, ugh, on the Soul Divisive. They're like, I don't like what
yeah,
you're doing, which is weird. If they're all sharing one mind, how are they going to be like, I don't like that? But they are,
right.
and so the Soul Divisive are looked at like that because they are the ones that were created to worship the Black Heart, because they learned from the Hive that worshiping darkness could grant power. And so they're the ones that are in the Black Garden.
Yeah, when you enter the Black Garden and they're all kneeling with moss grown
Mm-hmm.
all over them, and they're like praying to the statues, almost in a prayer stance, to the statues, and then the statues convert into Vex when you fight
Mm-hmm.
them, which I thought was pretty cool because if you think back to the darkness, the heart of the darkness, is that what that
Mm-hmm.
was called?
It was
The
called the
heart
Black
of the,
Heart,
yeah, the black heart. And so
and
it was this,
everyone had their own opinions on what it actually was.
yeah, yeah, everybody did. And you think about like the big black morphing orb in the sky that you're shooting at the end, and it just turns into a bunch of little red flecks that kind of float around. Um, what we know about the Vex is they learned this idea of worship from the Hive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's almost like a faction of the Vex that kind of separated their theology
Mm-hmm.
from what all the other Vex do. And so the other Vex are kind of like, it's almost like a backward heresy for them.
Mm.
It's like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this, you know. But it's funny that you don't see that Vex really kind of like with the Fallen. There's different ideologies and there's some infighting and faction.
Mm.
But with the Vex, you
And the
don't really
Hive,
see that. Yeah, and in the Hive.
yeah, and then the Cabal.
Yeah,
every
that's
every
true.
other
And now in the
race,
Cabal.
yeah, every
Yeah,
other race is all like civil wars within themselves. But the Vex, even when there are the Soul Divisive that make other Vex uncomfortable, they're just like, well, I guess if it's for the master and pattern, I just don't like you. They
it's
leave it
amazing they
there.
can work together even with that hard coding being different.
Hmm.
Hmm, that's interesting.
So the next entry is entry 10, which is talking about some of the failings of EXO, early on EXO that Clovis had. And so this is where he starts to refine the things that are needed. So Alcahest isn't the end all be all solution. He still needs to do other things to fix it, to make an EXO work. And early on in the century, we actually have Maya Sundaresh. I'm just gonna use air quotes on her for now because we're gonna find out exactly what the whole deal with her was in this reading. She says, uh, to kind of jump in the middle. She said, "That's your son's quote." She snapped. "You know, I've seen the video of his final days. That naked white exo, just paramuscle and soft membrane writhing in its cradle. When you were done with him, he looked like nothing more than a slug, Clovis, a twisted, limbless giblet. Did you support and nurture him while you tortured him to death?" Which is freaking brutal.
Yeah, that is brutal. That's like shoving your own, excuse me, but that's like shoving your own shit in your face. Look at this
This
mess you made.
Yeah, this Maya Sundaresh is messed up. Like she is
Yeah.
vicious, and it just doesn't fit any of the other Mayas that we saw before. Where it was like, yeah, like they're stubborn and they're determined, but they aren't like horrible humans. Just bringing
Uh,
up the worst thing someone's ever done, and I mean, Clovis deserves it, but still,
just hit him over the head with it, just with like strict, just like I don't give a crap about you
yeah,
attitude. That's almost what that feels is like. I really just have such disdain for you.
yeah, complete lack of empathy.
Yeah.
And so the
Wow.
issue with the Exos that she is chastising him about is that he finds out that they did not suffer human weakness. They never needed to eat, drink, breathe, sleep, micturate, whatever that is, or dream. And apparently that was the problem because Exos do need to do all those things. And Cade kind of made a joke about that where he was like, "Oh, that makes me sick to my stomach, and I don't even have one." But it's like, but you still have something that processes food because you
Yeah.
need to have that, even if it's just like a food, literally like a garbage disposal that just grinds it up and burns it. Like there's something in your body that handles that.
It's a construct of the mind though, like for exos, right? So they have to believe that they're in a body that's attached to their mind.
Well, yeah, they have to have the feelings of hunger because if they don't have the feelings of hunger, the feelings of a heartbeat, of breathing, of needing air and all that stuff, it convinces their mind that they're not getting it, that they've already starved to death, that they've already suffocated, etc. But if you have the feeling of hunger, then you need to have the feeling of uh eating. You know, you need to
Yeah.
have, even if it's just like plugging in a USB and it's like this is eating to them. But that would probably still mess with the mind to
Uh,
the point that's like that's not eating. That's not how eating is done.
yeah.
And it would
Hey,
fuck with them.
did you ever watch an old sorry, did you ever watch an old uh, movie called The Last Unicorn?
No, I have not.
Okay, so if you haven't, it's fine, whatever. You could probably just find this particular snippet, but there's a perfect example of this.
Hmm.
In the movie, it's a classic movie. The art was beautiful. It's all hand drawn and painted because it's back in the day. It's old, and I'm old, and so that's why I'm thinking about it right now. But there's this one particular scene, and there's a gatekeeper, and he's a skeleton, and he's like above the archway of the next room. And in order for you to pass, he has to allow you to pass,
Hmm.
and all he wants is wine. And it's funny because he's a skeleton, right? He has
Hmm.
no body, has nothing, whatever. But there's an empty bottle of wine, and so they give the empty bottle of wine to him, and he is just all about it. He loves it. He's drinking it, and he's like, "This is the best thing ever." And he's getting drunk off of the wine. It's just hilarious to think, but it's all of that memory that he had when he was alive, and he's like doomed to be the skeleton forever. Who knows the backstory behind him? But he's just a character in the thing.
Hmm.
So, but it's so great. It's just so great because he's like drinking the bottle of wine, and so I think about like Cade eating ramen somewhere. It's probably an empty bowl, and he's got like chopsticks, and he's just like
Yeah,
shoveling it
maybe.
into his face.
Maybe that is actually how it. I mean, we know he's drank before, but I mean, what the hell was he drinking? Oh, hey, yeah, look at
Oil.
that.
Yeah. Your tears.
Yeah. My tears are iridescent green. Oh my god, was he drinking dude?
No, but I have this idea that maybe he was drinking some sort of wannabe. What is the drink? The green drink that's
Yeah,
worms
that's
would.
what I just said. You're thinking of absinthe,
Yeah,
but
absinthe.
what I'm saying is that he was drinking dude by 3 olives. So go ahead and look
Oh
that up.
no!
That's exactly what Cade
Oh
was fucking
no!
drinking.
Ugh.
Never have that. That sounds disgusting. But yeah,
Ugh.
maybe they don't actually eat. Maybe they just need to have the simulation of eating, and that's actually good enough.
Sure. That's kind of probably what I think. I mean, it's just like they just do the activity and they go to that part of their mind where they think they're doing the thing. You
I
think
mean,
that they you think that they have to use the restroom though, right? Like, so do they have to go sit somewhere for a few minutes?
and that's what I mean. I feel like there actually has to be something like an actual process being done. It can't just be drinking an empty bottle of wine and your mind just fills in the gaps.
Yeah,
I feel like there needs to be
something.
actual something happening.
Huh.
But so exos, as we know, have mind wipes, and we learn here that they actually started just because Clovis is a sociopath. He he writes, I am much more interested in the surprising success of memory wipes. I became so tired of answering the questions asked by new exos. What had happened to their scanning clinic? How long had it been? Would I let them see their families? That I began introducing retrograde amnesia before spin up. Or before spin up. Okay, yeah. They just used a weird hyphen. Interestingly, this seems to have improved the resilience against exo mind rejection. He just wanted them to shut up, and he took their memories away. And then he's like, "Oh, it worked. Cool." Clovis deserves everything that he go like all the trauma that he goes through in this. He deserves.
Yeah. Ugh.
And so recently, I was talking about on Twitter the possibility that so we know that Rasputin is being uploaded into an exo body. So flash backwards all the way to the Golden Age. We had the Siddhartha Golem, which was Rasputin in an exo body. And so I have to ask, is Siddhartha Rasputin? Are they
I think
different?
so.
Yeah, they're the same because it's the same memories and everything. It's just existing in a new form. So
Yeah.
there is a point of divergence where Siddhartha goes on to learn and experience differently than Rasputin, but Rasputin gets all those memories as well. So that divergence is kind of closed as well.
Right.
Um,
So there's like he attains whatever new knowledge the
mhm.
golem got once that it's been absorbed when he comes
And
back.
yeah, and then the
Yeah.
Siddhartha died, and the Siddhartha was brought back to life by Fellspring. And so, as a guardian, traditionally, you're supposed to, as a guardian, have your memories wiped. But from Cade in the Treasure Island journal that we got with
Yeah.
Taken King, he talks about
Yep.
how the light fucks with an exo mind. And so Clovis here says it would be very difficult to actually track down and delete the full memory engrams since they are stored in so many scattered parts of the brain. Instead, we can tourniquet off associative access to those memories and let them wither away in isolation.
Mhm.
So,
Almost kind of like a degradation, like a
mhm,
digital degradation. If you were to take the one particular file in your brain that has all of those uh, latent memories, whatever
mhm,
that he doesn't want, he can separate them from you, pull them out, and then let them just die because they're no longer a part of the computer that drives your mind.
mhm.
And it's because over time they're just going to just not be used and just die.
Except that's how it's supposed to
Yep.
be. Except,
Except for the light.
yeah. except for the light, because in the case of a human, in the case of an awoken, they have their memories wiped. But in the case of an exo who has memories tourniqueted off, it sounds almost like that the light restores those memories and kind of like
Gives
makes
a little
it
bit
like
at a
come
time,
back.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're fragments. They're very much fragments,
Mm-hmm.
and it's. I've always had this idea way back in Destiny One that they were being almost kind of literal when they talked about ghost fragments,
Mm-hmm.
and we thought about the ghost as being built from the traveler and being a part of the traveler's light. And so, if you think about all the ghosts that were spread out everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and they're having shared different experiences that are detached from the traveler, but they're very much still a part of that entity, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They're just using the vessels that allow them to 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 drift amongst them,
Mm-hmm.
their little shells. And so when we find dead ghosts and we unlock new fragments, those fragments of the travelers or those ghosts' experiences, the mind in an exo could be very much the same idea, just on a microcosm. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's fragments of the mind that are reconnecting once you've experienced something that was close enough to the original pattern that helped you unlock it. Because, like, Cade is a perfect example because we know he used to use physical objects to help him remember things.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so he
he
had
said
to
he
hide
said
them.
multiple
And
exos do that too, not just Cade as an outlier. He said he picked this up from other exos who've also done this.
yeah, which really good one is Micah that we
Mm-hmm.
learned about now, and how he
Well,
his whole or she her whole story developed.
assuming that Micah Abrams is the same person as Micah 10, that is.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally am in that camp that they are the same, but who knows what's gonna happen.
I love the penguin statue
Oh my god, I can't
that
wait to
has
get it. I can't wait to get it. I'm so excited.
has a penguin inside of it. And I was thinking back to the early story development of Micah as a kid, like Micah Abram, and talking about how penguins are just thought of as for kids only or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes outside. Remember when he has to use the suit to go
Mm-hmm.
outside into the snow? Could you imagine if that suit looked like that
Well,
penguin suit?
so I think it did. So when we
Yeah.
got the penguins in Beyond Light, I was like, "Oh, these are the penguins. This is it. This is the penguin." But when Bungie released the physical, actual thing, penguin, you can go pre-order this now on bungiestore.com.net, whichever it is. There's an image that shows it opens up, and there's another penguin inside.
Yeah.
There's a penguin
So
inside a penguin suit. So I think that's the exact, like, that was the suit that they were wearing, and they were like, "See, your
yeah.
penguin wears the suit too. You're
Yeah, they were
brothers."
trying to facilitate the children
Yep.
into this idea that, hey, it's cool to wear the penguin suit because it keeps you alive and you can go outside in the snow and play or
Yep.
whatever.
Oh my god,
So cool.
I can't wait to get the penguin. But now I'm actually upset because I have the as right here the Jade Rabbit, and I'm gonna have
Yep.
the penguin, but we still don't have Dreaming City cats. Why don't we have the cats?
Ah, I know. Yeah.
But back to what I was saying before.
Go
So,
ahead.
because exos have like tourniqueted mind fragments, and the light seems to fix those instead of remove those, is Rasputin in an exo body today similar? Maybe not entirely the same, because again, there's the points of divergence, but similar, more so than any other case, to Fellwinter.
This is where we spin off, right?
Yeah, like, will Rasputin in an exo body be near Saladin? And maybe obviously Saladin would have to not know it's Rasputin.
Right.
And does Saladin go, "You're just like Fellwinter"? He's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'm Fell Summer. What's up?
Okay, silver.
This is my
Well,
this is my
okay, so
ghost Fellfall."
Fellwinter, air quotes, died in the chamber when it was sealed off
The
by.
replication chamber. Yep, he
Yeah, yeah.
was. Fellwinter was actually one of the Iron Lords that was repurposed by Siva. and for
Yes.
some reason they gave him flesh.
Well, they were all the same model, which
Yeah.
kind
But I
of,
mean,
yeah,
the funny thing about it is that they gave him flesh. Like, that's
did.
so gross. They gave him
Yeah.
teeth. What is wrong with Siva?
Ugh. Yeah. The it's funny because like the Twizzler form versus just the infected form is a little
Hmm.
bit different. Like there's two versions of Siva, right?
Yeah.
That we've seen. There's the Siva which has the more Siva, triangular
Hmm.
pyramid shape
Well, the
things.
pyramids and the Twizzlers, whatever.
Yeah,
That
red
is
vines.
like, yeah, the red vines. That is like Siva unfinished, right? It's like still Siva
Right.
forming to become, whereas Siva in reality, when fully programmed, fully set out to actually become something else, is clean. There's no red vines, there's no pyramids, there's none of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It doesn't break out into the red craziness.
Hmm.
Which is crazy because when you brought that up, and people are so hyped right now about Siva and doing
Yeah,
all kinds of cool stuff, which Plague, go for it. Plague Gang,
yeah.
hashtag Plague Gang. But anyway, the it made me go back to Exodus Crash and Exodus Black having
Hmm.
Siva on board, and it made me think about that. Like, could they bring Siva back in, and would they use Fellwinter in a way that would bring Rasputin uh, into a season? You know?
I mean, I've said it. I don't I don't see Siva returning as an enemy. When Destiny 2 was launching, we saw some pre-release materials of launching into a strike on Nessus, going to the Exodus Black ship to stop a Siva resurgence. Bungie decided not to do that. It, in my opinion, it sounds like they decided not to do that because they didn't see the lifespan of Siva or the potential of future Siva enemies. And so as such, they chose not to do that. I don't think they're ever gonna, maybe they'll change their mind. I don't think they should
Maybe,
change their
maybe,
mind.
maybe they could give it the glycon treatment and just have a sealed off
In
area.
isolated Siva. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be neat.
But I as I was thinking about this because of Plague Gang, I think the most interesting thing that they could do with Siva moving forward would be bring in Rasputin as an exo, Felsummer, and have him be the topic of a season where we're doing something with him. And as we empower ourselves, the new mods are like kind of like Warmind 2.0 mods, where they
Oh
are
yeah, yeah,
Siva
yeah, yeah.
mods. We have
Save a mod.
armors and weapons that are crafted by Siva. They are clean. They don't have Siva infections. We
Yeah,
get an exotic weapon that is a Siva weapon, and then the ornament is an infected weapon with all the pyramids and red vines, and it's
like
like,
it.
oh my god, this is a Siva gun. Look at this crap. Stuff like that, where it'd be more interesting to have Siva as a tool as it was originally intended, in my opinion, than to see it as an enemy again for one time. Or
Sure,
maybe
that makes
both.
sense.
More,
Or maybe, yeah, maybe there's an enemy. You
yeah.
defeat the enemy, you've broken the infection, and now you get to use it as a weapon.
We can have the isolated Siva event that Rasputin is like, this Siva has gone rampant. We need to stop it together. And then we
Right.
fight the Siva in this isolated event. This is the only place Siva is around. It's not getting an expansion. It's just getting a battlegrounds esque activity, a Glycon esque activity, and then through that, that's how we start using Siva weapons when we destroy the rampancy. However, that works. We'll
Yeah,
hack. We'll have a little spaceship inside a computer, and we'll
I
shoot
like it.
things. You know,
Make it so.
yeah. That's that's how hacking works, right? Like
Right.
there's a
Make it
little
so.
digital version of your head that shoots lasers out of your eyes at like devil-headed viruses. I've been a hacker all my life. I know this.
Hacks.
Yeah.
we're
we gotta focus. Where were we?
traveling. So we're traveling down. We've explored the idea of Rasputin,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so we're getting there. We're getting there. So now
Uh,
we're back to Clovis, and so we
Entry
think about
11.
the separation of exo mind rejection and how exos are different from what Rasputin is doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to delineate those two storylines
It is.
because you have two ideas that are very similar, but they have this one branch that makes them very different.
Mhm, mhm. Um, so moving on in the logbook though, entry 11 is about it starts out saying Elizabeth believes we are infested. And so this is the beginning of the infection
Yeah,
of the Vex. She has detected Vex microstructures in the European ice. Veins of altered crystal crawl towards the surface, harvesting the heavy ions of the Jovian winds, culturing their construction. And so the first thing Clovis does is he's like so sure of himself that he's like not done anything wrong, and he says the only possible vectors are my own exos. So he's trying to say that the exos are spreading the Vex infection, and that he should have kept them in quarantine longer after the exo conversion, because if you remember, exos use the alkahest, which is Vex mind fluid passed through stasis, in my opinion, stasis clarity as Clovis calls it. Could that, I mean, if stasis, if clarity breaks down Vex mind fluid and turns it into something else, how does that it's become a Vex infection if it was effectively broken down and changed, right?
yeah. So how does that make the matter down at a microscopic level still be able to affect or not affect, right?
Hmm.
So I don't. Maybe okay, you go to the radiolarian fluid. You think about the Vex as an entity inside
Yeah.
their mechanical structures that was created to support their life or the life support system for them, and this malleable structure that they've created for themselves. But at the base level, they are very much just. Um, I don't know what that would be. I mean, it's like I know we've explored this before, but how does that particular infection, air quotes, happen?
I think so. I think that the infection, Clovis is looking at the infection like it just happened. And he's saying,
Yeah.
if this just happened, how did this just happen? I think the infection started even before they went to Volantis.
Ah,
And because of that, he's once again blinded by his ambition. He's like, okay, so the infection wasn't here before; it just got here now. And he's saying what happened in this time frame. It's like exos happened in this time frame, so it has to be my exos.
ah,
And I think that's where his fault is, because as we go on, we learn that Maya Sundaresh is not Maya Sundaresh, and she's been there since the beginning. She was there since before they went to Volantis. So for that to be the case, you know, and it's actually in this entry 11 that we learn of about not Maya, as I call her. But before that, he writes, I will plan a simple, because he's still on the fact that it's the exo. I will plan a simple extension of the memory wipes already used to fight dissociative rejection. In fact, I intend to create a noetic immune system in the exomind to trigger memory wipes when certain classes of informatic hazard are detected. These will be explained to the psych team as a preventative measure against future dissociative disorders. And so, this is kind of coming back to exos plus light. Any
yeah,
exo, any exo out there who is not a guardian has the potential to see, learn, or experience something that will trigger their mind to just reset. Everything's tourniqueted off or deleted.
yeah,
But there's never been a case of an exo who did this, who had this happen, that was a guardian. It seems like the light prevents it from happening.
yeah.
And
So
so that's an
so that's
interesting
the
thing.
difference between these exos.
Like Banshee 44,
Yeah,
technically, right now, Banshee 44, unless Clovis was like, you're never going to get this. Like, unless he was like trying to protect his own exo from it, Banshee 44 had the potential to randomly one day be, I'm Banshee 45. Who the hell are you?
yeah, exactly. And he has a dialogue which I love, and it goes back to Destiny 1. When he said something about he remembers a female. He says, "I remember her," something like that.
Yeah.
Must yeah.
Yeah, it was remembering the exo stranger, and I remember back in D1 that was like a theory that was like, does he know the exo stranger? And I was
Yeah.
like, that's racist. Not all exos know each other.
Yeah. Oh, that's
But so moving on, not Maya is discovered, and so Clovis, after the previous fight with Maya, where she's like bringing out all the crap that he's done wrong, he's like trying to like fire her, and he says, "I have now considered M. Sundaresh herself would be an invaluable source, yet I
yeah.
cannot locate any work done by her from before our expedition to 2882 Volantis, nor does Elizabeth recall an M. Sundaresh from our expedition group. Then who else could she be? A Vex infection? It is unthinkable. The Vex cannot generate conscious persons." This is where he's wrong again, because
Yep.
he's like this. He's like, they can't do this, and that you will never change my opinion. You know, this is impossible. But they can emulate human minds they encounter, and perhaps even use them as tools, infiltrators, carriers. And so,
And we know that
yeah.
because of Destiny 1. And we know that because of the Ishtar team, who
Hmm.
was completely just stuck in that whole simulated environment for however long.
And so, just to kind of get the full story of it, in entry 12, I'm going to skip ahead. Um, in entry 12, we have Clovis being dead and waking up with his body in pieces. And we'll get more on that in a minute. But so Maya is there talking to him, and she says, "Something like this happened to me. I was an explorer once, one of hundreds of myself. Then I fell into a trap, I think, and they drew me out with a hook and turned me inside out to see how I worked. And then they made billions of me, all of us shouting at each other, shouting for Kioma, screaming for Mother. They were looking for the right one, and when they found me, they killed all the others. I knew I was different because the quiet made me happy. I was glad to be alone." So this is like the infinite parallels of Maya Sundaresh, and they found the one who was just as messed up as Clovis, and they were like, kill all the rest, take her, make her real.
Oh, that's freaking crazy to think of.
Because remember
Oh,
in Curse of Osiris, the idea of Red Legion going into the Infinite Forest was a threat, because the Red Legion can go in there and they can find some like insane technology that they used in a parallel timeline that helped them win the Red War, and they can come out with
yep.
it and they can be like, look at this gun that destroys light. You know, it's like boom, EMP blast, no more ghosts. And now they have that anyway, which is also
Yeah.
scary. But they
Yeah.
could have had it back in Curse of Osiris, which would be even worse, in my opinion.
You know what the scariest thing to me with that particular thought process is how the scions are able to have that neural connection with one another throughout all of these happenings. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm sure it has to be within a proximity, of course, but to think that there is a there, to hypothetically think that there is a situation that this could all go back to the scion flares
Mm-hmm.
way back when is um is scary to think that all of that could just that they could find that in the simulated uh, forest, that somehow one of those cabal could have found a key to unlock a way to bring all of that tech back to a happening that was before,
Mm-hmm.
with and maybe give it to the scion flares. That would be crazy
Mm.
because we pulled Saint 14 out of you know
Well, thankfully, the Infinite Forest is gone now. It was,
right.
you know, locked up, poofed into an anomaly, poofed away with an anomaly in its place. However the hell it works. I have no idea.
uh, and then Clovis. Here's the next part. Clovis just falls.
Oh wait, what?
Yep, your next part you're about to say.
Well, I was gonna go back up.
Oh, okay. Go back up then.
Because I just wanted to give the full explanation of what Maya was before we ended the show, so we don't leave it
Yeah,
on
yeah,
like
yeah.
a big cliffhanger like that. Because we're getting
Okay.
close to the end, and so the next bit, my cursor's on it. No exo interferometrics. That's a
Yeah.
big word, but so I'm really glad that we got here because I really wanted to talk about this line. So, while working on this persistent tower glitch in the Exo's sleep cycle dreams, I have been poring over neural telemetry from site employees and my own Exos, searching for preconscious influences on their behavior. Whispers in the dark. Many of my employees host a disgusting influence of the Vex. These patterns are resilient, hallucinogenic, and usually dull. But my exos betray a distinct and fascinating influence. There is something speaking to them, something subtle and light, fingered and tangled with every aspect of their thought, not a puppet master, nothing so direct, rather a texture, a tendency buried in the fluctuations of the alkahest. The minds of my exos are like antennae, tuned to some otherworldly frequency, perhaps the same manifold that those simpletons at first light obsessed over. Through my scattered exos, I can eavesdrop on the mutterings of the gods within. So,
Hmm.
do you think this is the long, slow whisper that Cade threatened Clovis with in his death letters?
Yeah, I think so. Well, my thought process is those those long, slow whispers are also a binary to the light, and how you think about, like, why call out the first light obsessing over anything in this, you know? So
Well,
there's something about this particular line, like you said, the whispers in the dark, and then calling out as a writer to the first light explorers on the moon.
mhm.
And if you think about what they encountered on the moon, and you think about light and darkness as being of the same source, kind of, or being in a parallel binary battle with each other, the long, slow whisper and that attunement to the light could very much come from almost the same origin point, I
When
would
you,
think.
what do you mean attunement to the light?
So, like, for instance, he says the mind of the exos are like antennae tuned to some otherworldly
Hmm.
frequency. Well, we know in the game that a lot of the things that happen are uh, are explained as songs
Hmm.
and the vibrations and attunements, and this idea that you can tune into a frequency that is shared with the light or shared with the darkness. It's kind
Yeah,
of what gives us our abilities and whatnot.
but so what I'm
So
saying, what I'm at, or rather, what I'm asking, why do you think that the exos are attuned to the light frequency specifically?
I don't think they were specifically. I think that they were
Well,
happening
even accidentally. I mean,
like
you
like their tone.
specifically. Why do you specifically think they are attuned to the light frequency?
I think because of maybe because in this particular part of this lore, when you think of a glitch and you think of how they can search for themselves, and you think about how they try to go back to because it's all about exo mind rejection, right?
Hmm.
And then the mind wanting to have a constant uh, they want to be convinced constantly in their mind that they're living in a body, but there's a particular part of that mind that is always branching out, trying to find that missing piece. Well, maybe this is the first idea, like what happened in First Light. So maybe this is the first idea where they found a frequency, or they found that a little bit of anomaly,
Hmm.
and it was just like dipping their toe, and it
So I
was a
mean,
part of the light.
I agree with like
Dark.
the 99% of what you're saying, that it's that they're tuned for whatever reason to the frequency of dark, though. That's where I differ. And I think it would be tuned to dark because they're created using the dark. Everything about them,
The alkahest,
whether it's
yeah, yeah.
clarity or stasis, however it's called. I mean, so it to me it sounds like the pyramids, the dark, the Black Fleet, the darkness, the winnower, whatever proper term it is speaking to the exos directly. It's whispering to the exos directly, and that's why it's such a detrimental thing for Cade to have the knowledge of. To be
Yeah.
like, I know that all exos are inherently dark, like that they
Yeah.
inherently are not of the light. And that's exactly what Elsie says in Destiny 1. I was not forged in light.
Light. You're right. So that's good. That's funny because if you think of everything on a set of threes, now you have the exos are dark, the awoken are in the middle, and the humans are of light.
Oh my god, yeah.
So
Yeah,
this kind
no,
of
that
ties that up
works.
in a pretty bow, right?
That really does work.
Yeah.
But
Neat.
yeah, so I'm confident that I'm confident that until I see more information, the long slow whisper is the darkness actually communicating with the exo.
I like it. And so the darkness has been whispering to pretty much everybody that it can in any
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form it can.
Exos are easier because they were built using artifacts of darkness, and humans
Nice.
are not as easy because they are humans. They don't have this access to the frequency, and Awoken were also created through the darkness, but also through the light. And
Light,
because of
yeah.
that, they have.
Yeah, the Awoken are very we learned through the whole Awoken lore that
Mm,
they are very much a part of both sides and can see like they
mm-hmm,
waffle between the two a whole lot. A lot of their dilemma comes from the shared knowledge of both the dark and the light, and so they're constantly using this balancing act in everything that they do to try to avoid what's happening, in the events in Destiny. But it's just weird to me that if you think about how much Mara knows, and
mm-hmm.
even her own frames in the what is it? And we had the social space in
Oh, the
Destiny 1. We
Vestian
got
outpost.
thank you, Vestian
Okay, I
Outpost.
wasn't sure what
Oh,
you were asking. I was like,
sorry.
what are you
She
asking for?
she knows enough information to know and have the wherewithal to say, "Hey, we have to continuously wipe our frames here because anything at
Oh
any given moment
yeah,
can happen," right?
yeah.
Yeah. So now that makes me think about that. Like if you think about what we were talking about at the very beginning of all
Damn.
this, a frame being manipulated by the darkness somehow.
Because even if it's just a machine, it could be accessed by the same frequency of the darkness. That's crazy.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's how Callus took over the frames that he took over.
Uh-huh.
Because
There you
he's the
go.
herald of the Black Fleet. Oh my god. Throw away your cell phones. Maybe that's why all the people that are finding things have razors.
There you go.
They're like, the
Yeah.
darkness ain't getting me. This thing can't even make phone calls.
Well, we did get an ornament for Fellwinter's Lion. It was called Ignorance is Bliss. Blissful ignorance. Sorry.
Huh. Man, I really like how that I really like this discussion.
Yeah. We just went there, y'all.
and we're roughly halfway through this. Maybe next week we'll just jump right into it. Just
Yeah.
to knock it all out.
Just knock it out and then we'll save the end for the craziness.
Yeah. And then we can
Sounds
we can
good.
so next week cuz I feel like we've reached our time here. Next week we will finish this discussion. We promise. Uh that episode will be on the 4th. What is that? April 4th.
Yeah.
Same time, same place. And then the show after that, April 18th, we should be doing Legacy's Lament,
Yeah.
which is like the actual end of all of this.
But
'Cause, goddamn,
it's
Bungie
a
just
good
told
one.
a huge story in like 3 separate places. Damn, I'm really happy about this long slow whisper talk. That
Yeah.
just
That's a
feels
good
so
one.
right. It really just feels so like so perfect. All right. If you want
Word.
to find more of us, find out more about us, or have any questions, you can find us on Twitter at Loose Cannon Show. It's spelled LoosCanonshow. You can search Loose Cannon to find our podcast, but if you do search Loose Cannon, it is Canon, not Cannon, like a cannonball, because we wanted to make a pun and made people have a hard time finding us.
Yeah, that's funny.
Uh, so that's going to be it for this week. We hope everyone who tuned in live enjoyed it, or if you're listening live, we hope you enjoyed it too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And don't forget, where it's at Armory Defined.
Yes, at
At Armory
Armory Defined.
Defined for lore cards. Go there for lore cards. Bye, everybody.